Good morning. Good morning. Dewey Freeman on one end there in Colorado. Mark Sylvester here in beautiful Santa Barbara, California. Good morning. Morning, Dewey.
Morning, sir. How the heck are you?
Oh, man. Is it okay to be okay?
You mean
I'm
you don't
okay.
want the red badge of courage of going, oh, I'm tired and I'm working so hard and I'm super busy, instead of going, yeah,
I am
my time's
so
pretty
not a
damn good.
victim. I don't think I've
Exactly.
ever, the victim card, right? You play that victim card. Uh, I, that card was permanently taken out of my deck and torn up probably 30 years ago. I was at a management retreat, as one does when you work
Hmm.
in corporate life.
Hmm.
And the guy said, okay, think of a time in your life where you were the victim of something. And it was like everybody got it. Yeah, everybody's hands up. Everybody could think of being a victim. Okay, now tell your partner, whoever's next to you, your story of being a victim and sell it. Like sell it. You were victimized. So okay, great.
That's a really good exercise. I'm going to steal this one.
Here's the punchline. Now tell the story about how it was your fault.
Whoa.
Now you're not the victim. It's not your fault. You were not victimized. This thing happened, but it was your fault.
Right.
Never played the victim card one again in my life because I had a legitimate conversation with this person about I was in fact victimized, or was I?
So when that leader asked you to do that, I'm assuming that you did the first part of the exercise where you shared with each other, and then you did the second.
Yeah,
You didn't know.
we didn't know. No, it was we were and we were in a really safe environment. So, it
Hmm.
was honest and vulnerable and it was a true story. And it was, I think back, that thing was bad. Now, at that same event, very rarely do I remember even one thing from one of these events that you're there for
Hmm.
4 days and you're like, you're super soaked with stuff, right?
Right.
But the other thing this guy did, he was quite good. One of the mornings, hey, how's everybody doing? We got the music going. How's everybody doing? Yeah, we're doing great. And he says, how many of you are a 10 today? And maybe like a hand or two went up. Okay, how many of you are nines? And a couple more hands. How many of you are eights? More hands. How many of you are sevens? Yeah, a lot of hands. All the way down. He goes, okay, why aren't y'all 10? You could choose to be 10. Like, there was no rules there. You're 10. You choose to be what you want to be. And again, that was another one of those at any time
Right.
anybody asks, how you doing? I may not say I'm a 10, but I'm going to show up as a 10,
Hmm.
right? Energetically. Well, that's not what we're going to talk about today. Our listeners are, I really appreciate the nation watching and commenting and, they're getting value out of this. Again, hopefully if they pick one thing out of our conversation, that's
Right.
great. But there was this kind of an elemental question, which is, what is an elder? I mean, our show's called The Elders. Like, what is an elder? And I have some thoughts on that. And I'm curious when I just ask you, what's the first thing that popped into your head?
Experience.
Mm,
The very first thing is experience. The next thing that pops into my head is that experience being in my bones.
mm. We had talked about shared experience as a way to build trust. Like when we
Hmm.
share an experience, that happens. Um, One of the things I have about elder is I don't know that elder is related to age. I think mostly it is, but it's not exclusively that. Would you agree?
I would wholeheartedly agree. And I would actually agree in both ways, meaning that someone who is chronologically younger really truly could be an elder. And I think it's Steve Jenkinson who talks about having olders instead of elders.
Oh,
And that clearly not all people who are in a chronological category of, I don't know, 65 above, maybe, I don't know the right age, 60 and above, that many people who are in that chronological category are not really true elders. So
I have so many thoughts on this topic, which is why I'm really glad that we're talking about it today. Because one of the things I've had in my head when I was 19, when I was 20, when I was 20, I was working two jobs. I had two kids by marriage, a baby on the way, was the night manager of a restaurant down here in Santa Barbara, managing people at 20. I don't know that I would have handed the keys to the kingdom to a 20-year-old. Yet I showed up as an elder in that case, right?
Well, two things. One, what was that like for you? What was your inner experience? And then there's a similar kind of thing I want to share, but I don't want to interrupt that piece for you. What was your experience as this 20-year-old?
It's a 100% for me. It was being trusted to be responsible, to act responsible, make responsible choices. And my first experience with that was when I was 14, and I went to Boy Scout junior leader training. And there's, I don't know, a couple hundred of us probably in the opening assembly. And we're standing, and the scoutmaster pointed at me and said, "You're the leader of this crew." I was like, well, I think because I was tall, right? And that's the only way, because he didn't know anybody. And I learned about leadership starting then. And so I never shied away from it. And I felt the responsibility both to the people in my charge, and the people who were above me, had given me the responsibility to take care of something, whatever that thing was, kind of my whole life. And so that's, I think it's a lot more than that, but clearly that feeling old when you're chronologically young was something I was aware of early.
What was it like for you as a 20-year-old when you had an employee that was, say, 34?
Oh,
person.
Yeah. Interesting. In improv, we do this thing with status. There's always a high status and a low status in any scene, to have not conflict, but to make it interesting. If you have both are at the same status, it's not interesting at all. So once you understand it, you got to figure that out. And status doesn't come from age. So 34 didn't matter to me. Actually, it's kind of, what's interesting is I'm not affected by age in that way. So I don't remember specifically, but I wasn't really nice back then. I was like, get the thing done. So I probably was a bit of a jerk. Kitchen work does not breed
anybody
kindness.
Around.
Thankfully, I learned that I wasn't the real asshole chef, but I did get stuff done. I liked hearing yes, chef, yes, chef.
Very cool.
And you?
Well, I graduated with my master's degree in late '74. And I went in and was hired as a therapist in a school. When in '77, I was then hired as the principal of that school. And at the time, I was the youngest principal in Colorado.
You weren't even 30, right?
Correct. I was 27.
Yeah.
And I had to grow up.
Mm.
I had to learn, because if I had a student who, say was 17, their parents were probably, could be anywhere from mid 30s to 50. And I had to figure out, I did really well up till then working with kids. It was sort of my specialty. I'd done like Outward Bound stuff and other camping stuff. But it was like, oh, how do I sit down with a mother or a father or both and work through whatever needed to get worked through? And probably the biggest thing that particular job did was allow me to become an adult.
Mm-hmm.
And later, after I put together my whole developmental model and was teaching that, one of the things I would ask my students is, how do you know when you're an adult? Because part of my perspective is you have to become an adult before you can become an elder.
Oh, yeah.
And, so my question was always, say you're 20, you could be 20, you could be 37, you could be, 51. And you're still not an adult, or at least potentially can still not be an adult. So how do you know when you are truly an adult?
And there's no right question, I'm sure, or right answer rather. I'm curious, what was the most common answer?
Usually the most common answer had to do with money, had to do with becoming a parent themselves.
That's a help. That one always helps.
That one always helps.
Have something to take care of. Have someone to take care of.
And my perspective was, and still is, large part, the process of becoming an adult is a process of, one, really getting that your parents actually had sex to have you.
Okay. Yep.
That
yep.
you actually can go, oh yeah, because not many people think about their folks having sex.
Mm-hmm.
And then two is that your parents struggle just as much in life as you do, that your parents are a mixture of wonderful, lousy, creative, struggling human beings on the face of the earth, that when they get up in the morning, that they're a person. They sometimes slept, sometimes didn't. They have their worries, but to truly see your parents as just clearly another simple being on the face of the earth, and to be able to stop projecting on to them what you think they ought to be.
Well, projection is another whole show, isn't it, Doc?
That would be true. but
I've got 4 weeks of shows planned for us.
You just keep writing them down. but that actually, and again, and I started this with, talking about knowing something in your bones, but knowing that in your bones and being comfortable with it. It's like, oh, yep, they were 12 once, they were 6 once, they were, they had the same kind of problems that I have. They wondered whether they could pay the rent and make a meal and have sex and everything that we worry about.
Is it fair to say, because what you just explained is how to frame something where it's not about you, but it's about someone else?
Exactly.
And at that point, when it is not, you're not the center of your own universe, but you try to figure out what someone else's universe is like, is an adult slash mature capability.
Well, and being able to do that from earlier in our conversation today, we talked about not being a victim.
Yeah.
And being able to be that curious about what went on with your parents from a place of not being a victim.
I am reminded of, remember TM back in the day?
Oh yeah, that was my first way that I learned to meditate.
That's how and then I'm okay, you're okay.
Yeah.
That book, that and that got me through divorce from my son's mom when I was 20, which was very devastating. And I had to grow up very, very fast because I was a single dad as well. So I had the 100% responsibility of my son, plus the challenge of just all the emotional drama of, that divorce has with it, which is a ton. But it's interesting, Dewey. On these Saturdays, we bring up all kinds of stuff. We're opening up drawers that have been closed for a
That would be true.
long time. What? Here's something I'd love your comment on. We're now living in an age where there are 5 generations out there. The greatest generation slowly fading. The boomers, of which we're smack in the middle of the boomers. The Gen X, our kids. The millennials, and then they call it Gen X, or I call them Zoomers, or Gen Z rather. I call them Zoomers, that are coming into this. And it feels like there's less of a passing the torch from generation to generation. Like, this is how you show up. Here are the tools. Here's the stuff. Because to your point, everybody's busy just figuring it out for themselves. And so here, I'll get to the question, Doc.
Great.
I'm speechifying before I get to the question. There is a new word in the lexicon in the last, I won't say several years, we'll say few years, called adulting.
Yes.
What did you think when you first heard that word after you stopped grinning?
My first thought was, what the hell does that mean? I actually had 2 responses. One is, thank goodness. This is a really positive move.
Yeah.
And the other one was a little bit of the polarity of that around, it's like, oh, instead of being an adult, you're going to play an adult. And so,
yeah.
And which is an interesting piece. And I'm a little bit, well, let's stay with this, because there's another whole piece here that jumps generations, that I see that we're doing, that jumps generations, at least possibly around a lot of the Zoom, around a lot of the social media stuff around something. So, but that was those were my first responses. What were yours? What was it?
Well, it's I've lived long enough to saw that first as a hashtag. It's adulting, and it's like we're adulting tonight. Like they have a dinner party and they have wine and they set the table. They do all the stuff they probably saw their parents do. Right. And said we're adulting, and what would an adult do? What would because they just don't have a frame. Or they do have, the frame was the parents, but who knows about that one. You said something that got me thinking, you said they're acting like adults, or they're acting like what they think adults should be.
Well, that's sort of what you just described.
Exactly. And in improv, we have this notion of taking on characters. So your character would do something that you wouldn't necessarily do. Currently, we're working on low status characters, how to be a low status character, which is tough because we're always fighting for status.
Right.
So that to purposely go in with low status, and our coach will say, I know you're not, but your character is. And so he has us actually change our voice. So what we hear is not ourselves. We hear this other entity, which gives us permission to be something different. That whole idea is something I've abstracted into the term as if. So act as if. I know you've never done that before, but act as if you've done that your whole life. And it is not fake it till you make it, because that's not authentic to me. I mean, it has the word fake in it. But I think if you act as if, and you're genuine, like your character, you're now in a play and you're the elder. What would the elder do? Everything you do is going to be correct because that's your view of what an elder is. Act as if. And that has helped me in life when I'm in a situation where I'm unsure. And I'll think, okay, that's fine. First time, okay. But I should act as if I know what I'm doing. And just have trust. Just act as if.
And is there a question with that, or?
I was speechifying again.
Well,
I mean, do you find yourself even, now at in elder status, I think 70, that you still find situations where you need to act as if?
I do at times. What I do is I don't change who I am. What I try to do is walk into a situation that I don't know about and just be who I am. And sometimes that's saying I don't know. And sometimes but what I know, and this is actually part of what I would, if I were at least in some ways going to define an elder, one of the pieces of that would be being able to walk into a situation and be okay, even if you don't know what the fuck you're doing.
It's okay to not know.
It's okay to not know. It's not reflective on me as a person. It's like, even like in talking with you, like, I don't know if I could do a TED Talk. I don't know if I could pull that one off. I don't know a lot of the technical stuff that you know on computers. I don't know those things. But it's okay.
I can't ride a horse.
Well, exactly. And it's like, there's a piece in horsemanship that you probably should never bring up horses, because I'll start talking about them. When I first began riding, I grew up around horses, but we didn't ride. That was all work horses and draft horses. When I first began riding, and I've ridden really solid for 25, 26 years, the woman who was my instructor, who's still a very good friend of mine, at one point said, when you first start riding, you're a passenger on a horse. As you get better, you become less of a passenger and more of a rider. There will then be a point when you're riding where you can actually help make your horse better.
Hmm.
And when I heard that early on, I went, whoa, I'd never get there. Where the partnership really becomes that, where you're actually, your horse is helping you be better and you're helping your horse be better. And that's another aspect that I would speak of around perhaps what an elder is. And a part of it, and I'm trying to like feel into the as if part. I think my as if is that I can fully be somewhere, and what I know is that I'll figure it out.
It was what I thought when you said to be comfortable enough and have enough ego strength to go into a situation completely unknown to you. In fact, lean in to those situations a bit and know, hey, I've got enough tools in my tool belt to figure out whatever happens. And
Whatever
even if
the
I
heck is
don't,
going
I'll have a good story to tell afterwards.
on. Mhm.
And to trust that and know that, to your point, there's no judgment, no shade on you. Not that you could
Exactly.
even put on yourself for not knowing. It's just we're back to trust again, that you trust yourself,
Yes.
that you can go into one of these situations. And there's another improv term, which is you prepare, you don't plan.
Exactly.
So you're prepared, but I can't plan how I'm going to respond. I don't know. I've got to walk in.
You've got to be right smack in the middle of it to know.
Yeah. And we say listening loudly.
Exactly.
You mentioned something that I'm curious about, which is someone more experienced than you telling you about something. In this case, the teacher telling you this is what the journey is going to look like. And we have people telling us stuff all the time, and some sticks and some doesn't. But the ones that stick, how many years ago was that? 40 years ago?
Probably close to 30.
Okay. So
And in fact, what's really cool is her and her husband have moved out of state. She's going to be back in town visiting. I'm going to go ride with her tomorrow.
Yeah, you are. Tomorrow.
Even
better.
Even better. Just a really sweet circle.
So it feels like those things that we learn that help us grow, help us be more adult, help us be more better, bigger, transform us, come from, reading a book or listening to someone and being open to that. And it makes me think of that question you'll get a lot of times, which is, if you could, what would you tell your 20-year-old self? And then I ask, and would you listen?
If I could, I would tell my 20-year-old self that you're going to be okay. And you're going to do well in the world. Because at 20, I had graduated with a degree in engineering and physics. I then ended up on the Kent State campus during the shootings. That rocked my world and turned my world upside down. And I left the world of being a mechanical engineering and a physicist and started working with kids. I can say and I've said this many times, if someone would tell me, when I was 20 that I would be sitting on the side of a mountain, working with horses, being with the woman that I'm with, doing what I'm doing, talking to you, hanging with Traver, hanging with my other friends, I would go, I don't believe it.
So that's the not listening. My answer was go figure out what meditation is and start it, and don't ever stop. Go find a dojo and learn martial arts, and understand the role of the free things in life that contribute to your wellness. Sleeping, free. Doesn't cost you any money to sleep. Breathing, also free. It materially affects everything you do if you have conscious breathing. And drinking water, also free.
At least most of the time, unless we buy all those bottled waters. But
yeah, well, but I
get what you're saying. Absolutely.
And it's funny how if someone had said to me, make sure you're drinking enough water, take 2 or 3 times a day, just stop. Didn't know why that worked, but it does, right? I've since learned it.
Mm-hmm.
It activates the parasympathetic nervous system and all of those things. Martial arts taught me so much, and meditation, everything. Those 3 things, if I could come back, but I'm not sure I would have listened. That's the thing that's ironic to the whole thing. It's me. I trust me.
Yep.
I'm going to come back and I'm going to meet you in a dream, and I'm going to talk to you and say, okay, Grasshopper, this is what you need to do.
Those things that you just spoke about, I speak with many younger people about on a daily basis. That's probably, there's a lot more, but those pieces are the core of the therapy. It's like,
no kidding.
Oh yeah. I will do some martial arts stuff right in the middle of a session. I will be out with horses and breathe. I will start sessions with breath. I always have water and food for people. That's pretty interesting.
It's interesting. We've never talked about that yet. That's so core to what you do, and it's such a foundational belief that I have.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that cool?
But all came late in life after I was 60. Martial arts when I was 50, and got my black belt when I was 53, and my second when I was 56. Did not see myself as the Karate Kid dojo kind of guy. But my wife said, because she's gone every night, and that's when we were dating. So if you want to see me, you got to come to the dojo. I was like,
oh, really? Kimberly said, if you want to see me, you got to come to the dojo. Wow.
And I went, and it wasn't anything. It was not like the movies. Grandmaster Wheaton, my age, couple years older than me, tall as I am, just from Connecticut, but had lived in Hawaii for a long time, which is where they had met. Just the most gentle soul you ever want to meet, and the most welcoming environment. And I was like, oh, this is not what I thought. And I did not miss a day of training in 3 years, and made my black belt in the shortest period of time you could.
That's impressive.
Well, it was, I had no idea. I literally had no idea how big of a deal how much impact it would have on my life. And he has a thing, Grandmaster says, when about 6 months before your test, you know when it's going to be, but he'll come and look at you, and you're ready. You're ready. You're going to test in December. I want you to get ready. And that was a whole thing. He says, but I want you to keep a journal, because I'm going to have you write an essay on what your road to the black belt was like. And because I'm an entrepreneur, business guy, and creative, I wrote how standing in a circle and defending 8 people, one at a time, and eyes closed, and figuring out where everything is coming, it was just like being on a sales call. To me.
Yes.
It was just, there was so much of what we did on the mat was 45 minutes on the mat prepares you for the 45 hours you're at your desk. And it's not about the fighting. I mean, look at what Traver had done. You know, he went into martial arts because he was studying to be a doctor. He wanted to understand what pain was. He listened to one of his talks. It's like, I needed to really understand pain. So I think for me, martial arts was, I wanted to be around this girl I had fallen in love with. But in the meantime, I learned.
That's a great motivation.
Yeah, always. But in the dojo, there are the tenets, courtesy, integrity, perseverance, self-control, and indomitable spirit. And when you see those and say those every time for years and years and years, that is back to what we started talking about. It's in your bones. You can't not be that. And so I would encourage people, my 20-year-old, go find a place, go to 3 or 4 of them in your town, watch it, audit a class, watch it, see which one feels right, and then just go do it and trust that it's going to be good for you.
That's amazing.
And then go find a tree stump like you have up on the side of the mountain, so you have a place where you can just sit.
Which the snow, I've gotten through the snow enough to be able to do it now. So here's what's really, 2 things. One is, and you sort of answered it already with the 5 tenets. What else did you walk away from with that? Because, and part of the reason I'm asking is your integration of your martial arts with your life and your business is the same thing I've done and actually been mentored to do with the martial arts that I work with and practice with horsemanship. And one of the biggest pieces, and this is going to feel a little bit weird, but the piece that actually literally brings tears to my eyes is the piece around respect. I love the respect of bowing at the door, going into the dojo, and bowing before you get in the mat. And when the sensei, and I don't know what your setup was, but if for the sensei where I'm practice out of, it's like everybody's back on the mat ASAP after a break. And what's interesting is when I teach, it's like many times that respect is not there that way. I don't think it has to do with me. I think I just see it with people. It's like
culture. It's cultural.
Yeah, there's a cultural piece, and it's like, so. Well, let me just share a little bit too, like the idea of, and it's Aikido, and
ours is, just so you know, it's Hapkido, which is a blend of Aikido and Taekwondo.
Perfect.
It's a post-war martial art. It's new relatively.
Yeah, that's really cool. I didn't know that we had studied that was that blended in. But the idea of inner softness is what gives you power. The idea of blending and blending with movement, and the idea of, being able to integrate that into life and horses. Because if in an Aikido, I don't know the right word, move or technique, when you're blending and moving, and you're not doing that physically, you're doing that through an energetic process.
Yes, exactly.
Horses pick up on that. I can sit on a horse and send my energy forward, and my horse will walk. I can drop my energy into the ground, my horse will stop with no other cue.
That's one of those minutes to learn, lifetime to master skills, isn't it?
Yes. And so I like that term, minutes to learn, lifetime to master. Like, okay, I like that one. And what my question to you is going to be is, as an elder, what have you brought from your work with martial arts into your elderhood?
I think that it's the first thing that comes to mind is the five tenets. Those show up in one way or another every day. The physical things of being able to defend myself. I'm not in situations where my safety is challenged, but I absolutely know I could handle myself in any situation or defend my loved ones in any situation. Not that I would win, but I would prevail enough to be able to run. We were always taught, figure out how to do whatever you have to do so you can just get out of there. It's not, it's not about getting it, just get out of there. So I know that the thing that the most, the respect thing is important, but I think that comes from the tenets.
Exactly.
Courtesy. Like we do that. In fact, Dewey, I remember interviewing at our software company, interviewing someone. We talk about running a martial business and having a martial life, and that the most important things to us, and by extension to the people that we surround ourselves with, are these five tenets. And I would explain them to people. And I remember one woman on the callback, I said, well, why did you want to work here? She says, I've never been in a job interview like that, where you talked about values and you talked about how you show up and you talked about what's important to you guys and what's important to the culture. And I didn't think that was unusual at all that we did that.
Exactly.
I remember my daughter called once and she was really annoyed about work. I don't remember what the details were. And she was, and I said, oh, so this is what perseverance looks like. She goes, Dad. Says, well, I mean, hold it. We either persevere or you don't. It's a binary.
Oh, Dad.
Right? You're either courteous or not. You're either in integrity, you're not. You either persevere or you don't. You either have self-control or you don't. And my favorite of the five, I love them all. And it's the one that gives me the most strength, is indomitable spirit. And I remember when Grandmaster said, he said, you can't be dominated. Just know that about yourself. You cannot be dominated. And that one thing, I think, for business, to answer the question, it's knowing that you're fine. Gonna be fine.
So I don't know where we're at time-wise.
You got a minute or two.
I would really appreciate you speaking those five tenets, those five values again very clearly so that people get that. Those five, carrying those and having those in your bones and living those is adulthood / elderhood.
There you go. And what a great way to end it. Great way to end the show. It's courtesy. And I would suggest, like in the dojo, they're printed out and they're right up in front. You can't escape them. And whatever it takes for you to put them up someplace where you're going to see them all the time is good. Courtesy, integrity, perseverance, self-control, and indomitable spirit.
courtesy,
integrity,
integrity,
perseverance,
perseverance, respect,
self-control,
self-control, and respect.
Indomitable spirit.
Indomitable spirit.
Respect is woven in there.
Got it.
Dewey Freeman, this is another great conversation, my friend.
Thank you, sir.
Go have a great rest of your weekend. Have a great Easter. Have a great sojourn with your friend. That'll be great. And I'll talk to you next week.
Sounds wonderful. Have a wonderful weekend.
Okay. Bye-bye, sir.
Bye-bye.